as I was saying, talking during the whole pre-roll, not realizing.
Yeah.
Welcome, everybody, to another Seanversastions. I'm sitting here with Pete Twiss, and Pete Twiss is a dude that I've known for a number of years now through music. And we'll get into your background, because it's not just music, but I want to get everybody familiar with who you are first.
Yeah.
As anyone who's been watching these knows, I have somehow become friends with a ton of interesting people, and you're one of the more interesting cats I know. Not to set any pressure on you, but every time we've had a conversation, it's gone wild, weird places.
Yeah.
And I dig that about you. You're a very considerate and knowledgeable person. I've just dove directly into something that I call divulgences at the beginning. If there's something that I need to lay out there, I do. You have a very fascinating mind.
Oh, thank you.
It's a pleasure to talk to you every time. You're welcome. Thank you. So you are a writer, musician, artist, freethinker.
Yeah.
Wild dude. Is there anything else that you would throw in that caricature that people might go, okay, I got an idea who I'm looking at?
I don't think so. I love neuroscience, psychology, and recently got into philosophy and stuff like that. So it's really gone well with the things I already cared about.
Yeah. And where you like writing, expression, and creative thought, all of those things line up pretty well usually, which probably explains, your fascinations build what your outward facing connectivity is, and when I connect with you, that's why it becomes fascinating. We have some overlaps and things that are interesting.
Yeah.
So diving right into it.
Yeah.
What have you been up to lately? Because the last thing I got from you was a piece of writing that's going to be featured in Seacoast Entertainer when we go live as a writing contributor.
Yeah.
When we do, Pete Twiss, that's the name, everybody, Pete Twiss, look for those. Whenever there's some Pete Twiss content that's out, read it. The one that you wrote that was coming out of a show in Boston, it felt like I was talking to a friend, and I remembered the night.
Yeah.
So when you approach writing,
Yeah.
how is it that how are you putting this all together? Not to be like, what's your process? But I know you're a musician.
It's interesting because it goes back to an earlier conversation we had about past versions of ourselves, and I used to write a lot, but it was always like little short things. And honestly, most of the time it was drunken nights, depressed nights, or whatever.
Yeah, Hemingway agrees.
And but I really started to evolve as a person a few years ago, and I really wanted to do something a little. The piece about the show is not necessarily optimistic or some inspiring piece, but I started trying to do more with my writing, and I had started thinking about that, like what direction I wanted to go with my writing. And then someone let me know about a writer out on the West Coast, Nick Jana, and he offers writing classes. So the problem with me a lot of times is that if I'm one of those people, if I don't have a deadline, the more pressure, the better.
Yeah, okay.
So I signed up, and it was a memoir writing class, and honestly, the night my class was starting, I was like, I need to look up what memoir is. I didn't even know what it was. I mean, I had a vague idea, but
from hearing it in cartoons and old shows.
Yeah, or hearing about somebody who wrote one, but So it was great because he's so down to earth, and the groups are really, really small. And I ended up in that group I was in that class for 18 months.
So before you go on, if this is a tidbit that might help somebody else on their creative writing, what's the name of this person, and where can they find this person?
Nick Jana.
Nick Jana.
Yeah, Jaina.
Where would they look? Just all of
the
interwebs?
I think it's nickjana.com, I believe. Yeah.
Okay.
So I had like this tendency to be a writer anyways, but that you know, the stuff that he just basically gives tips. He's like, this is how I write. This is how I start.
Yeah.
When I'm stuck, this is what I do. And it was great. So that particular piece, you know, it was an assignment about, the whole unit was about tints in person. So it was basically like, you know, get your baseline of where your now is, you know, when you're using the present tense words.
Yeah.
And then jump around, jump forward, jump backwards, or start a year before and work up to the point where you're boom, you're
and now
here.
We're live.
And so so that's what I did. And so that piece I had written, and I was proud of it. But we moved on to other assignments. That was probably the most enjoyable unit. The one about tints and everything was great. But then at the end of the year, he wanted to just have one whole unit about editing. He said, pick a piece. You know, everybody picked a piece that they wanted to work on. And so I went back to that one, and there were other little units. You know, there's a unit he gave about using dialogue and going back and forth and presenting it in a way where you don't have to say, and I said, and he said.
Yeah.
And so I was able to incorporate a lot of what I learned in the 6 months after I wrote it, and then incorporate that into it. And I got to work on it for 6 weeks, you know? So that, yeah.
So this is really coming from a point of you had something there.
Yeah.
Somebody showed you how to focus it and a couple of tools to use.
Yeah.
And you've now taken that and you're applying it, but you're channeling what you have an ability to channel already from my experience knowing you in music. You kind of know how to tap into the creative flow and channel, you know, perception and perspective that wouldn't otherwise be obvious.
Yeah.
So now you're doing that, but with writing.
Yeah.
So that's really cool.
So that's, and like you were asking what I've been doing, you know, that's the last 6 months or so have been a little crazy, but whenever I do have time, that is what I gravitate towards now. You know, music, I would love to go back into messing around with music, but I feel like my writing, there's an opportunity to affect people in a positive way, or, you know, and honestly, when I'm writing stuff, sometimes I process, and I guess people who write a lot know this. I'm still figuring it out or learning it, but I love it.
Oh,
like,
every day.
I figured out so much stuff writing about what I didn't know about, what I couldn't figure out, you know, and then I get done, I'm like, did I just write that? Because that's the answer to the question I've been trying to write about for days.
Yeah, keeping track of thoughts is an underrepresented art form, and I think people have great thoughts a lot of times, and they just disappear into the ether because they don't catalog it, they don't write it down, they don't do anything with it. It's really interesting, the people who have creativity compulsions. You know, it's that thing where you can't get the thing that's repeating in your head out until you sit down and you plot it out either on the keyboard or the drum set or the guitar or what have you. Like you grab an easel, some canvas and some paints, and like you just feverishly go until the thing is done, and then you take a big breath and you're like,
there you are.
Yeah, now I can get you out of my head. And you can literally just throw it away. It doesn't matter, but it's not bothering you anymore.
Yeah.
That compulsion, if you don't have that compulsion or you don't identify that compulsion, I think that's the difference between a creative artist and a lot of people. You know, I mean, there's a lot of people who don't find that they have something like that until later in life, and it's like it was probably there, unless you were a different version of yourself before.
Yeah.
But I mean, that just kind of feeds the idea that if you're constantly evolving as a person, you constantly have something new to look forward to discovering.
Yeah.
Why would you stop?
Yeah, and especially with memoir, like the evolving process, because I think with a lot of things, maybe there was a certain time when what I write about would have been too soon to write about it. You know, that's...
Sure, yeah.
But to be able to, and that's kind of into the evolving conversation about like getting a proper relationship with my past or events in the past, you know, and being able to jump right into it, you know, write about something as if I still feel it, you know, and be able to capture that. And I've had people in the class be like, you know, what you were expressing there, like, that's, you know, they had certain thoughts about it. I'm like, no, I don't, like, that's not how I feel now, but I'm able to go there.
Sure.
And probably articulate it better than I ever could have. But it's not like a lot of people, and it's understandable, they get into some heavier topics, and it's not good for not good for their mental health, or, you know, but it's nice to be able to, I'm lucky to have the ability to dive into some really big moments in my life,
Yeah.
write about it in a way that's compelling and seems present.
Yeah.
And
it's a good skill to have. You're going to be able to really help people relate to things that you've gone through. And I know that there are others out there who are either currently going through some of the things you've gone through, or have in the past, and they haven't started to parse it out yet and make sense of it.
yeah,
So where you're really good at articulating your point of view and kind of where you've come from, where you're going to, I think it probably will help an awful lot of people to kind of see what works for them. And not saying, you know, core to psychology is don't ever presume that you know where a person is, but, you know, lay things out and let them figure out what it is, make sense of it. But I think there is enough overlap and enough similarity that, you know, some of your experience, some of your perception will give the breadcrumbs necessary for people to have their own ideas.
Yeah.
You know, and one who may have already read several textbooks on neurolinguistic programming, you're probably adept at it. One of my favorite things after going through all the psychology courses in college was just buying textbooks that were fascinating. And there was a guy out of Boulder, Colorado, drawing a blank on his name. It's generic, but well, it's not generic. There are other famous people who have a similar name, but with the other name first.
Yeah.
And I don't want to misquote it, but he was the head of the psychology department at University of Colorado Boulder in the time frame of 2001 or 2, 3, 4, and he wrote a number of books on neurolinguistic programming, and fascinating area of psychology, really cool. Like listening to people, what they're saying, and picking up on clues based on how they choose their words to figure out how their brain works. And there's a number of different ways that people's brains work, and one of them is if somebody repeatedly says things like, do you see what I mean? They're a visual-based person, and a lot of what they're saying will be rooted in, you know, optical type stuff. And if you cater what you're saying to do you see, and paint a picture for them so that they can see in their mind what it is that you're describing, it'll work a lot better than if you give them 1,000 words that beautifully articulate what it is, because it's an auditory person. You know, words are the communication, that's the way that you're transmitting matters a lot to people. And if there's no reason for them to be hearing all of these words, what are you doing? You're not communicating. So, but yeah, there's some fascinating bends in psychology. And one thing you just said, there's an interesting way of looking at self-exploration and dealing with trauma that's coming up, and I think it's a healthy thing. And it's the idea that while good to do the work psychologically pertaining to your mind, your development, who you are, where you've come from, all of that stuff, dwelling and staying in the emotion is massively detrimental. And I think there's a lot of people out there right now that are just spiraling in emotional chaos because they live in their trauma, trying to figure it all out, and living in it is not what you're supposed to do. Learn from it, go back to it, use it, but get out of it.
Yeah.
Like, it's there, you know it's there, you don't have to exist in it constantly. The getting past it is stepping beyond it and looking back at it and analyzing it, but it can't control you anymore. It can't hurt you right now. It can
Yeah.
only hurt you when you allow it to, because you're doing work with it.
Yeah.
But get out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, a big realization. Well, I don't know if it was a realization. It's just something I started telling myself because I think it came on the heels of a lot of thinking, but like productive thinking. You know.
Yeah.
I wasn't getting stuck in a loop, but it just became this. Okay, how am I going to grow from this? Like, no matter what happens, like that's an opportunity to grow.
Yeah.
And what am I going to do with it? And yeah. So not getting stuck in any certain state of mind, but like, okay, I'm gonna put this over here, and I'm gonna look at it, you know,
Yeah.
pull it away a little bit, and
Come back to you,
yeah, yeah.
I'm sure.
I probably, you know, I don't know enough about it to like speak about it well, but one thing that really had a profound effect on me was listening to Stephen Hayes talk about, they call it ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, but that's something he came up with over like decades, and he could see that it was effective, and there's a whole lot to it that I don't know well enough to get into it, but there's like certain things about, you know, self as context, perspective taking, and psychological flexibility that, you know, kind of gleaning what I could from that, you know,
Yeah.
really helped with that process of going from someone who might normally just ruminate on something to someone who's like, okay, I'm going to you know, push that back a little bit, get some distance, let me get a better view of it. Let me look at it from this side or this side. Okay, what am I going to do with this?
Yeah.
And it's going to be all right.
And that's kind of the root of figuring out any problem, is you can't, well, either problem or debate or debacle, what have you, any kind of a situation. If you can't see it from multiple points of view, argue it from multiple points of view, I don't think you can really fully understand your own position or your own understanding of it. If you're only looking at it from your point of view and you say all the other point of views are wrong, you don't really know well enough how to defend your idea to stand on that idea. And you shouldn't hold on to ideas. You know, use them until you create better ideas.
Yeah.
More precise understandings. But if you hold on to your ideas and you make them a part of who you are, you never evolve. And you're just constantly holding yourself in this one frame of mind. But it's almost childish. Like you will never evolve past something if you can't let go of ideas, things that you thought, well, this is definite.
Yeah.
This is clearly this is this. If you think that for the rest of your life, I don't know if you have a full grasp on that thing.
Yeah.
If you can see an argument or a side from 3 different directions and argue its validity from all different directions and believe that they're all possible and then still come back to your original, all it means is you've got a better formed original idea, because now it's better informed from multiple directions.
Yeah.
And then you evolve.
Yeah.
And then take on another one.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like we are our own problems.
Yeah.
So doing that type of a thing really is the most challenging and most prescient thing.
Yeah.
Because we are sitting in ourselves all of the time.
We frequently think we know the perspective of ourselves. And
Yeah.
that was, you know,
Until 10 years pass.
yeah, not to tap in too much to something I've written that I think you've read that, you know, but what I had written last night, you know.
Oh, I know I read that.
And just one of the realizations that I had while I was trying to like really look at myself and figure myself out was, you know, I was looking at myself in the mirror and I'm like, well, I'm the only person who sees myself like this. Like this is the flipped image of me. Nobody sees me like this. Yeah. I'm the only person who thinks I look like this. And you know, some of the cameras, they used to flip it the right way. Or maybe they do now. I'm bald. So, you know, when I was a teenager, I'd see my part on the other side and I'd be like, that doesn't look like me. And everybody'd be like,
Oh, yeah, that's one of those weird things about your brain flips it, the mirror flips it. So if your mirror flips it and your brain flips it and it's all upside down, what do you actually look like? And none of us actually know.
yeah. Or just the fact that the mirror image is not what anybody else sees. They see
Yeah.
the flipped because you're, and also, you know, I don't know what I was doing, you know, in my teenage years that I'd be recording myself talking, but we all did it, and nothing to be ashamed of. But you know, you hear your voice play back, and you're like,
That's
"Oh,
not me.
Is that me?"
I wonder who that is.
And everybody's like, "That's you. That's what you always sound like." And it's like, man, we don't even know what we look like. We don't know what we sound like.
Yeah.
What the hell makes us think that we have a better perspective of ourselves than other people?
Or how we think at any given point in our life based on the information that we had then, which is different than the information that we have now.
Yeah.
I mean, every time we wake up, we're counting on the fact that we're the same person that we were, but we don't know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
We believe. We blink in and out of existence in this weird way. What's going to sleep? What even is that? Where are we?
Yeah.
When we come back, are we the same person? We believe so.
Yeah.
But we change. We evolve as a person. People get things from their dreams.
Yeah.
What is that we're accessing?
Yeah.
Is that a different stream? Is that a different dimension? Is that all inside of our head and we're just running schematics over the course of the night just to, you know, kill time, or
Yeah.
something more to that? I don't know. I mean, I've listened to a lot of people talk about it.
Yeah, it's a fun thing it's like a thought exercise. It's a fun thing to think about.
I'm not a professor in any way, but I do have a full running, working knowledge of the topic of conversation
Yeah.
from the perspective of I'm a human also. I
Yeah.
think you do too. I think everybody listening kind of gets that idea of you go to sleep and you wake up, you count on the fact that absolute is absolute, but if we know that anything is possible, then everything is indefinite.
Yeah.
If you have this perspective and it changes, it means perception is a chosen state of reality. If perception is a chosen state of reality, then anything is possible. You can just change your mind or look at things a different way.
Yeah.
Or come about things from a way that you end up with something that you didn't anticipate ending up with. Change the input data.
Mm-hmm.
We know that from computers. Our brains are sort of computers, so is it a screensaver, a dream? I mean, and is a screensaver necessary? Is it fulfilling some kind of a thing? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's interesting listening to people talk about them, though.
Yeah.
Maybe when they have a huge amount of terminology.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you put things together? Do you put complex notion together by lived experience, or amassing a dictionary of terminology and then like putting it together piece by piece? A mix of both.
Probably a mix of both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably, I don't know. It's hard to say that's the best way to go. But I mean, I have a little bit of advanced schooling for whatever that's worth. If it's not a continuation, is it like if it's not a devout study, like a constant study, does it diminish? I don't think so. You know, because if it informs who you are and your thought processes evolve,
Yeah.
then what you have now is because of what you had from where you came.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we all universally accept that.
Yeah.
So there's got to be a continuation, at least RAM.
Yeah. I don't know. This topic might be a little bit over my head, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Well, let's put in a timestamp. Move past that.
Okay.
Before we get too far in, I want to make sure that the people who are helping us to put Seacoast Entertainer stuff together and on are recognized. So we're going to have about a 30-second break here and let people find out a little bit about Tangram.
All right.
All right. See you in a second, guys.
Here they are,
Without these folks, taking Seacoast Entertainer to the next levels wouldn't be happening. Not to this scale. Tangram 3DS actively supports our music and arts scene and has proudly been part of it for the last 20 years. Their creative pros bring vision to life with everything from 3D renderings and VR to video, animation, web design, and branding. As a team of artists living and working on the Seacoast, Tangram considers a thriving local culture essential to us all for the connections we make, communities we build, and creativity we foster. Visit tangram3ds.com to learn more, see their work, and imagine what they can do for you. So, aliens.
Aliens?
Bringing it back down to this planet.
Okay.
I want to know from you what your current most interesting fascination is. What are you looking at in the creative realm that it could be an artist or some new way of looking at something that you...
Yeah. Well, one thing I'm going to try to dive into is restarting classes because things are starting to settle down. And I think the availability right now is with creative writing. And I think that adding anything is going to benefit me as far as writing goes. So getting into creative writing with the same gentleman, Nick Jana. So I'm excited to get started on that. It's probably going to be like another month before I'm able to jump into that.
Yeah. And then how long does that last?
So one unit is like 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
Yeah.
So that's when you get the new tool.
Yeah. Over the 6 weeks, you get the new tool. And sometimes there's multiple tools in the unit. But yeah.
But you'll have stuff to mess with at least.
Yeah.
So you're going to apply that to what? Because doing the experiential writing, clearly you have a hand on the tense writing.
Yeah.
When you get into this new direction, what are you getting that with the anticipation of using it specifically? Like storyboarding, or
that's as far as writing goes. I want to learn everything I can.
Good attitude.
You know,
yeah.
So the direction I'd like to head in is memoir.
Memoir.
Stuff, but at the same time, writing under the guise of fiction, you can tell some stuff and change some names, and it's,
Now you've got fantasy. Now you've got long story arcs that you can look at from all kinds of different angles.
Stuff that maybe wouldn't be great to put in a memoir and attach to my name, or not
Sure,
that I've got much stuff like that, but
No, but as a style, I mean, a lot of movies, a lot of productions, without saying this is a memoir, that's the style that they're writing in.
Yeah.
And that's, telling the life and times of, from a specific angle with either a narrative or first person or whatever. Now, would you see yourself writing any kind of like a short film or a play, or is this all more therapeutic and self-discovery?
No, I could see like short stories or short films would be very interesting. And a lot of some of the feedback I got on the piece about the show, people felt like, if this sounds like a short film, and doing more little vignettes like that of little moments, it seems like it'd be cool to go into like the short film, writing like that.
Well, the way that you describe things and the scene that you paint, I already had a movie running in my head. Like as I was watching it, I was casting it,
Yeah.
So
I appreciate that, because I know what that's like to be reading something and then you realize that you're the only person who knows, you've just created a whole world based on somebody's whole world. They're describing something and everybody who reads it is picturing it a little differently, but it's a wonderful thing to get, to get lost in that, or sometimes when you are familiar with the places to be like, okay, I'm walking through this.
Yeah. I could tell it was going to be like an indie kind of thing because it all was like visually in my head. It was all sepia.
Yep.
So it was kind of like lo-fi,
Yep.
focus features.
Yeah.
I could,
Yep.
Wes Anderson, a little, kind of in the weird realm.
Yep.
Yeah. If you were to take that and you were to write like 10 or 12 more of them, can you stitch that together? Like, can you take, because you set and setting with character in such a cool and relatable way. If you do that 10 times, do you get from here to here intentionally, or do you like weave a story together? Would you write 10 or 12 things and then like move them around and then go, okay? Or is that just the editing process? Like, is it just about writing all of these scenes and then letting it all form?
That's the idea that appeals to me.
Yeah.
There's probably somebody, probably somebody goes, oh, this event in my life took a year and a half. I want to write about that, and let's walk through it linearly. And, one of the approaches that I got, that were kind of offered as an option in the classes was just write, just keep writing, and then, pull them out and see, okay, is there a thread here? What's the thread? How do you take this piece and bring them together? What are you talking about here? And even if they're completely unrelated, that's one of the classes, is take two objects randomly and build a metaphor with it. That's on a, not a microscopic level, but that's on like a sentence level, like 2 words.
Yeah.
How are we going to tie these 2 things together? You saw a bird and a tree, and you're leaving a concert brokenhearted. Figure out what those 2 things have in common. And it's probably even better if they don't have anything in common, because you get to make it,
Yeah, that's a really cool exercise. That's a good prompt. And it's probably a good way to get from one place to another in a scene setting kind of a way. Like, you have these 2 different scenes and you're trying to figure out how to tie the 2 of them together and what meaning to pull out of it.
Yeah. So have a bunch of pieces and then kind of look for that on a bigger scale, So like whenever I finished, it was the month I finished writing that piece. It was, about going to the show in 2020. It was the last show I went to before everything shut down. And then
2020 BC.
Yeah, yes. And then I had been to some shows, but I hadn't been back to the Sinclair yet. And so the night that I went back to the Sinclair, it was last minute. I told one of my dearest friends, like, hey, I'm going back to the Sinclair for like the first time in years. And it's like, the band isn't actually that important to me, but this is important to me. So we went, and the story, it's definitely worth writing about. I'll just say that. The little circumstances that came up, my tickets didn't actually work. I bought them off of StubHub, but the venue had changed. So all this cool stuff happened. And then, I thought about it afterwards. And I was like, don't want to plan too far ahead, but that's a nice end cap, to have this beginning piece about, going into COVID with that show and where I was at then. And then I finally make it back to the Sinclair, and this is what happened when I was there, and just a completely different headspace I was in, and like the growth that I went through that time. And so they're kind of bookends. I haven't written it yet, so, I'm not acting like it's it's a bookend, it's a potential bookend.
Yeah.
But, and then, okay, what do I put in between? What are the other shows I went to? Not that they would necessarily fit in to a full-length memoir. They might not really fit. But if I write them, I might see how they fit or where they fit or the other aspects, because, it's not going to be 20 chapters or 200 pages or 100 pages just about one show after another. This is how I felt at this show. This is how I felt at this show.
It may not even be informed by all of the shows specifically that you went to, but the fact that the character is a showgoer.
Yeah.
And could jump off from any number of points from there. Like, is it the way that you used to go to shows versus the way that you go to shows now? Or is it just that this person is an avid viewer of music, live music, and that shapes the way that you see them and might expect them to act or react in any other given circumstance?
Yeah.
Like, is it a background thing?
Yeah.
And I guess you don't really know that until you kind of tie them all together. I mean, that's arc, right?
Start writing. Yeah, I got to start writing.
Just more and more of them.
Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to see where that goes. I hope it does turn into something cool. And, cast it.
Yeah, yeah,
Cast it. Film it.
yeah,
PPM TV would be a great place to do that.
yeah,
At least stitching some ideas together.
yeah,
Like even if it's not, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to film a low budget indie film and I'm going to be the next Kevin Smith, but like get some ideas together and see how it works. See if
Yeah.
it's clunky.
yeah,
Break it. Like what's that saying? I love this saying, the first draft doesn't have to be perfect, it needs to be.
yeah, yep,
Do it. Make something. Get something down. Doesn't even matter if you move it around or use it as the inspiration for the thing that you're going to write next.
yeah,
If it's just a piece of something that's a cue, like if it's a match, the match isn't the fire.
mm-hmm,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you make a match, which can do a thing, it can turn a fire into a fire.
yeah,
Teeny tiny little fire versus a big, big fire.
yeah,
But yeah, you make the thing first.
yeah,
So I dig that. You're at this point where you can add another creative endeavor. So you've chosen to write,
yeah,
and it's coming out in the form of not, I mean, in a way, self-discovery, but more creative exploration and what you can do with molding clay.
yeah, yeah. I think there's that part of me that wants to somehow pass on something really positive, but in the end, it's, my experience and trying to make it beautiful, That's the real goal.
That's the artist talking.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, about
And-
doing the thing, making the thing. If you get something from it, irrelevant. I'm
Yeah.
glad, but
Yeah.
that's not why I did it.
yeah, yep,
Yeah. Yeah, Ryan says that all the time, and Ryan from Cursed, he's always, he's like, when I make something, when I make a song, when I make an album, I go, that was for me.
yeah,
I'll let you listen to it if
Yep.
you want, but
yep,
yeah. And,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of artists kind of have that. That's the compulsive creator thing, I
Yeah.
think, where
Yeah.
you're like, you need to make the thing, and now you've made the thing, and now you can just like take it out of your brain stores or turn it down or whatever and focus on something completely different.
yeah,
Painters are notorious for that.
yeah,
Hyper fixating until they get it done and then they set it aside. It's like, oh,
yep,
maybe that's writing for you.
yeah. And one of the things, and maybe, I don't know, I need to talk to more writers. I need to get back in touch with some of the writers in the class to talk stuff like outside of like the actual working class. But one thing I always find myself, or I seem to find myself with like this thing that I need to say, whether it's to somebody or it's something that I need to write about. It's not like, this isn't creative. It's not something I need to write about because it's creative but there's like a block. And my brain's like, you have to take care of this thing. Whether it's important, it could be important. Maybe I'm quitting my job and I want to, and I'm putting it off. But like, until I take care of that thing, like, there's going to be no creativity,
Yeah.
So it's, yeah.
Yeah. Now, so that's the other side of it. Where it's not a compulsion, it's a demand. It's a necessity.
Yeah.
It's something where if it's not exercised, it's staying in that cramped form.
Yep.
Yeah, nothing moves.
Yeah.
So you start digging.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
Or I get that thing done because sometimes it could be some professional thing that I have to take care of, or not it's something without a deadline. Like, oh, I have to present this to somebody, and it's like, oh yeah, I couldn't write until I took care of that. It was like that was in queue, and everything else was trying to go around it, and wasn't going to happen.
so does that tie into the timeline? Because you said you need a timeline. When you have a time or a deadline, it puts that correct pressure on you, the useful pressure, where you get at it.
Yeah, I need the pressure of a timeline and deadlines, but I also need to sometimes, write about something that maybe I don't want to write about, but I know I need to, and like get that out.
Yeah.
Like, so that is like the shackle that's holding me back, and the deadline is approaching me, I suppose. I got to think out that one, the metaphor of it,
Yeah.
but yeah, something's holding me back from writing the way I really want to write, And then, so I got to get that done, and then now I'm free. But also a deadline helps, you know?
Yeah. That's interesting, because that's a different way of looking at a similar kind of thing. Is it a push or is it a pull? You know,
Yeah.
like it's a deadline, it's an impending thing.
Yeah.
So it's like this agitation where you're in a panic to maybe not a panic, but you're blocked until you exercise, until you get it through, until
Yeah.
you finish what you're doing. There's an imperative.
Yeah.
Whereas it's an annoyance, it's a hindrance from another creative perspective, where there's this tune that won't stop. It's not a song yet, but it's this thing that won't stop going through my head.
Yeah.
And you have to sit it down and plunk it out. So that's an annoyance, where it's just like it won't go away until you do the thing.
Yeah.
The imperative in that is, I don't want it there.
Yeah.
I need to get it out of my head so that I can clear space for this other thing that I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so you forcing yourself to put a deadline on is almost the way that you would commit to sitting down and plotting
Yeah.
it out on a piano. Like the deadline and the how do I get this to stop
Yeah.
are two crossing things, basically aiming at the same thing,
Yeah.
which is get this done, get this out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you haven't moved too far. You've just kind of inverted
Yeah.
in terms of the way that you approach creativity.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you dive into your next writing piece, do you think it has anything to do with what you've done so far? Or is it just you're exercising? Let me change
Yeah.
that. Not the exercises.
Yeah.
Not the exercises, but when you see that next block that you're trying to work through, and maybe it's a difficult thing to put yourself in that position, because, I mean, I know you've found yourself against multiple blocks. You can define what it is, and I've read a number of pieces that you've put out, or another number of writings.
Yeah.
So you've clearly identified and figured out how to manage those. Can you
Yeah.
predict what another one might do and how it might present itself, like whether or not it ties to any of this, or if it's just completely abstract of what you've already done?
You know, most of the pieces that I did, so you know, there's a couple that you've seen that were from those classes, and then there's other ones. I never went into any of them with like, okay, this is the story I want to tell necessarily. It's just like, okay, I've got to present this. A lot of times it was taking a tool, you know, at times it was an assignment, but taking that tool and being like, what life story, what night, what day would that tool work on, you know?
Yeah.
And then, you know, stretching it out to wrap around that tool. So, which is, I guess that's another thing, is I've been sort of dependent not only on deadlines, but the generation of what I'm writing about frequently was based on a prompt. How is this like that, you know? And that's probably a bad example, but one of the examples that's worth mentioning is he's like, people get too fixated on what the whole story is. And he's like, leave out the whole story and just take a stab at like what the beginning of the story is and what the ending of the story is. Which was a really helpful thing.
Yeah,
you
that
know?
prevents you from getting bogged in minutia.
Yeah.
What's your point?
And
What's
then,
the beginning and the end?
Yeah.
Figure out the middle and the...
Yeah. And then, you know, the next exercise would be like to tie in. Sometimes it's as simple as like, look at the words you're using. What kind of words are you using? And it gets down to specific stuff for people who are into various, you know, whether it's the tarot or the, I'm trying to think of archetypes, people who are familiar with archetypes. I'm not familiar with archetypes. But read that and like, does any archetype speak to you in that piece? And if so, what are words that are associated with that archetype? And like, can we bring that language further into the end piece? And so even though I wasn't very good at that, the whole picking an archetype to write about or various elements of that, I always have enjoyed in writing, whether it's a long piece or a short piece, is like taking this stuff from the beginning and weaving it throughout, and like maybe even repeating it in a different way at the end to be like, oh, you thought you knew what this means? Here it is again, and it means something completely different,
Yeah.
you know?
Now that you've shown them how to think from a different perspective or see
Yeah.
something from a different perspective in different context.
So being able to do that with a piece, but also, like I said, when you build up enough pieces,
Yeah.
you can kind of start seeing how they interact with each other. And I look forward to having enough pieces to lay them out and be like, what's the thread? Or there is no thread, but I see where I can make one, you know?
Yeah. So you would then become a stained glass maker or a collage maker.
I suppose so.
You're patching things together, different ideas,
Yeah.
dusting them up. I mean, what you just described is almost half writing lyrics to a song, you know?
Yeah.
They're all little, not all of them. One song writing format takes the idea of like a storyteller, where you give very similar to like a very small year and a half time period window into somebody's world, and then just kind of describe it in a sing-songy way, you know. But if you come back around to it at the end, and you show them something interesting that they weren't expecting, that's also a rug pull. That's a thing that songwriters use a lot of times, where you think you know what you're listening to, but then in the end you realize it's something else entirely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me of Once There Were Trees.
Once There Were Trees.
From Cursed on Earth.
Okay.
This is one where Ryan wrote it to sound one way, and if you listen to the words, you hear something completely different. Like, it sounds happy and a bit jovial until you read the words, and it's like, ooh, gutting.
Yeah.
Like, really, I don't want to get off on a sidetrack, but seeing people's response to that at shows is hilarious to me. So many people bop along like, yay. It's like, no, man.
Yeah.
No, yay, no.
Yeah.
So I don't want to harp on it, but I'm fascinated by the possibility. Is there a way that people could read what I'm talking? Because I don't want to be cryptic, you know, but I also don't want to blow up your spot. Like, you write very personal stuff sometimes, but you also write stuff that is not personal, but it sounds personal because you're so good at it. Do you want people reading your stuff? Can you tell them where to find some of what I've read, or you want that like just between us friends?
No. Most of it is on Facebook.
Okay.
And the privacy settings have always pretty much been public.
So they can go find you on Pete Twiss on Facebook.
Yep.
And look for this shining face right here. And you don't mind people reading through any and all of your works on there?
Not at all.
Cool.
Not at all.
Cool.
And kind of having that, I don't know, when I first started putting stuff like that on Facebook, I was really using Facebook as like a diary, you know? And it's led to so many great connections with people. And I've always wanted to be an open book. There's certain musicians that have, I don't want to say inspired, but they also, they've set an example for me.
Sure.
You know, it's not like I saw them doing it and be like, I want to do that.
Yeah, no, good.
But it's like, hey, that's the way I want to do things too. And it's kind of what I was doing. But so most of it is on Facebook, and a lot of it over the last, 5 years has been figuring myself out, and it's been great writing, trying to articulate things that I really try to get a different perspective of, or like see myself and like, whoa, like that thought process was so not beneficial to me, or I was blind to this, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, I do like sharing that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's
It's,
'cause-
if nothing else, it's accountability.
yeah.
You know, it's admirable. First, watching you do it. I mean, and knowing that sometimes it is personal and sometimes it's not. It's just you know, talking through something as though it could be you.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing you do that, you know, you do it in long form. And nowadays, you know, a lot of people, unless they've pre-verified who you are and that you have something interesting to say, if it's longer than a few sentences, like the inclination is to just keep scrolling, like whatever that long
that's the thing
stretch
is
of text is, it's not for me.
I've thought about trying to get on various things, but when's the last time I followed a link?
Yeah.
When's the last time Facebook showed me anything good anyways? But
yeah, it's a barren thing. So nowadays, every time I see something that somebody spent a long time writing something, I'm more apt to stop whatever it is that I'm doing and look at it. And I think yours have been a contributing factor, at least, in that. Because for a while it was like I got, just like everybody else, caught up in the scroll and like, what's interesting? This is nonsense. Okay, that's mildly interesting.
Yeah.
And then get to something that you've written and it's a long piece of writing and I'm like, okay, cool. Now I get to engage with something, and I take a time out and read the whole thing, and it's been nothing if not therapeutic from my POV. So I'm presuming it would be and will be for others as well.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
I
If people
appreciate that.
if you don't mind people reading it.
No.
I don't know if we can put a link on the screen, but if people need to pause, a lot of times they do because somebody has just said an album that mattered to them, or an artist, and they hit pause and go listen to that album and then come back. That's what I'm telling everybody to do anyway. It's what I do, literally. I mean, if somebody says this album was just a pivotal thing for me, pause the podcast, go listen to it. I think people should go find Pete Twiss on Facebook.
Yeah, the thing is, I don't know what the actual, you know, you have to look up Pete Twiss. I'm probably one of the only Pete Twisses.
I would imagine.
There's not too many of them.
But
I don't know what the actual URL is for myself, because at various points I had pages for like, I'm gonna put all my music up here, and you know, this is 15 years ago, or I'm gonna do this. So I don't know if it's just Pete Twiss, but if you look up Pete Twiss, you can.
I think most people are pretty good at being A-grade stalkers, circa 2002, 2003. Like, it's so easy to find out everything about a person if you just have their name and like a rough visual of them. Yeah. So there's cameras on you right now. They can see your face. They can find you. It's easy enough. Unless you've got a profile pickup where you're like, it's all blacked out or something. You're wearing a ski mask.
No, nothing right now. It's just you'd see my face.
Cool. So that'll be easy to find then.
Yeah.
So when did a lot of these start? Because it was like 2020-ish, right? It was.
Yeah. If we get a little deep for a minute, you know, for a long time, you know, some of my more creative poetic writing started like around 2013, 2014. And like I said, it was mostly late nights, not taking care of myself, writing this, writing that. And there were many times when I woke up and I'd be like, I can't believe I posted that on Facebook. I got to take it down. But then I'd look, and it struck a chord with some people that I really admired and that have really been important in my life. So I just kept going with it. And but it kind of different circumstances or whatever up in 2020 made me really want to shift my focus on how I write, what I wanted to share. You know, a big part of that was Like, my mom follows me on Facebook. We're friends on Facebook, and it's like, man, I don't want my mom to worry about me anymore, you know?
Oh, yeah, there's a big moment.
And, like, I'm, you know, late 30s, whatever I was, but, like, it's time to, like, start taking care of myself, and that, you know, that has affected my writing, but it's also affected the way I live. But, like, yeah, it's time to quit worrying mom.
Yeah.
It's time for mom to feel good about, you know, just be at peace.
Yeah.
And so part of it was that, you know, there was some like highly emotional, like, it was like teenage poetry writing going on for like a month. And I was like, whoa, what am I doing? I gotta stop this, like, refocus. And then there was a couple experiences I had that really changed my perspective, just completely. One of them I wrote about last night because it was the 5-year anniversary of. And then there was another one that was really about, it was about acceptance. I listened to Stephen Hayes talk about acceptance and commitment therapy for hours and was like, I can't believe the impact those times had on my life and my perspective moving forward. So from there on, I had a conversation with somebody about whether or not we're born good. Are people born good or are they born bad? And I don't know if I thought a lot about that. And I started really taking it apart down to the nitty gritty, you know, like,
Yeah.
as much as I could. I like that stuff. Like, what evidence is there that babies are good, you know?
Yeah, and there's plenty of evidence that
Yeah.
babies could be bad. Like, you see, any parent knows this, but
Yeah.
I mean, there is this weird little duality where some kids are just sweethearts the whole time, and then they end up being complete psychopaths. Like,
Yeah.
but then it goes the other way, where you can see a baby do something that's like, ooh, that's potentially problematic. But then they
Yeah.
pull their hand away, and they look, and they think, and they process, and they realize, and they never do anything like it again.
Yeah.
And that's just, you know, bumper cars. Like, they're just figuring
Yeah.
out what works and what doesn't. And kids do that when they treat somebody awful. I think
Yeah.
I've seen that a number of times where a kid says something and they haven't said anything like that before, or they're mean to a kid. And then you see that look on their face where they're like, oh, I didn't really like that.
Yeah, it was
And
like they're
not
testing it out, and it was like, that didn't feel
trying
right.
it out, and they don't like the way that they made that person feel, and they go hard the other direction, and they don't ever want to make anybody feel like that again. So you know, I don't know that anybody can ascribe whether a kid is born good or bad or in the middle. I mean, I think there's a lot of first of all, anybody that says they have something all figured out is selling you something. I just posted something like this the other day. To the extent that we can see a perceivable universe around us, we can see and we can hear, but we can only see and hear a very limited amount of the perspective
Yeah.
possible, because there's, you know, as far as measuring what we can see and what we can hear, it's just this tiny little fraction of what exists around us. So if we can't perceive it, there could be any world actually around us. We can only perceive a tiny little bit of it.
Yeah.
Because we can only sense it with our eyes, hear,
Yeah.
feel it, you know. But if we know that everything is at its smallest level, vibration and light, what's solid? What even is it?
Yeah.
And not to go again too deep into outer space talk, but if perceivable world around us is confined by the parameters with which we have instrumentation to sense it, what can you possibly know? We can presume, we can understand, you know, at any given time what we have data for. But
Yeah.
if we're not constantly crunching that and looking at it and reanalyzing it, as we get more, we don't learn anything.
Yeah.
So kind of watching you work out in real time your creative endeavor in writing, I think, has been part of the excitement in watching your artistry, because, you know, it's like one of those live painters where they start with nothing, and when they start throwing paint at the canvas, you can't tell what the hell is happening. You
Yeah.
just know that there's some kind of madness going on, and then in the end it's like, oh, bam, like this, holy cow. I feel like that's what I'm watching real time.
Yeah.
It's really fun. It's really cool. And I make it a point to see literally everything that you write and you post. Not to,
I appreciate it.
I'm not trying to blow your head up, but I'm saying, like, if it's in watching the ninja become a ninja, if that's an art,
Yeah.
not just the martial art that they're doing, but watching that whole formation, to me, that's a new form of art. And I'm having a blast watching it.
I appreciate it.
Pretty cool.
So, yeah, one thing, and it kind of ties in, but I realized that, like, I don't want to have the answers. I don't want to be given the answers. There is nothing that excites me more than realizing that I've taken a questioning perspective and realizing that, oh, someone else also questioned that, you know? Because,
Yeah.
like, I call it reverence for the mystery.
Totally.
Like, I'm sure there's some things I want to know, but, like, as soon as you know something, there's this inclination to stop trying to learn about it if you're looking for an answer.
Yeah.
And there's so much to explore. Like, I want the things without answers, you know? Because, yeah, you can fly all around that and take different perspectives and still be like, I don't know, but it's really fucking cool, you know?
Yeah. I don't know what's more fun, learning something unexpected or realizing that something that I've known and thought needs to be adjusted. Like, because if you know something, if you think something strongly and you, quote, know it, really you only know it until you know better. And now you know that.
Yeah.
So if you're not clinging to and holding on to and making every thought that you have of, you know, a piece of you, and you're willing to just hold on and let go of things that you think, I almost think it's more exciting to learn that there's a better way of looking at or understanding something that I thought I knew.
Yeah.
I mean, the new cherries, they're fantastic to find where you're like, you didn't have that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. That's a really cool thing that I didn't have
Yeah.
before. But, and that maybe that's that thing about honing, you know, and I'm a really big fan of honing and getting good at something, but not just getting good at it, like getting good at it and then taking it to another level,
Yeah.
using it to become something even more.
Yeah.
And that's evolution, like where creation, you know, is taking and making something or adapting something from one form, whether it's, you know, whatever ether or creative river musicians and authors and that stuff all often talk about dipping into, whatever that is, whatever energy or form that is, taking it and manifesting it into something that we can now all perceive, whether it's a sculpture, a painting, a song,
Yeah.
whether it's that or taking that sculpture and hitting it with light from all kinds of different directions and then running cameras around it and like making some visual thing that wouldn't have been able to be possible had you not made that sculpture in the first place, and then hit it with all kinds of different lights or perspectives. And
Yeah.
it's the evolution I'm always fascinated with, but the reverence is always to the creation, like the thing that exists now that wasn't before. It's always been my fascination with musicians also,
Yeah.
ones who are just out there,
Yeah.
wild. And that's something okay, so that's the next thing I definitely want to talk about with you, because your depth and understanding in music, you're like me, you're a music fan. And it makes it difficult for a performing musician because you always want to be going out and seeing shows, but you have to rehearse, you have to record, you have to play your own shows, like all of that. If you're not on stage anymore, I know you go to shows.
Yeah.
Whenever you call me to go to a show, I do everything I can to cancel whatever it is that's in my way, because you haven't brought me to anything that wasn't awesome. Where do you find stuff, and do you go about it? I want to know, do you go about it similarly, or can I learn something here? I want to.
I usually try to dive into associated acts with with bands that I already am familiar with, whether they're touring with them or, you know, I like to know the various elements of a group, you know. So when there's more, when you crack that open and there's a whole lot more, it's.
How do you crack that open?
So I mean, it's, you know, one example I could give is, for like 3 months back in 2009, there was a new vehicle in the household, and we had Sirius XM, and I'm not.
Oh, okay.
I'm not a fan of the typical radio stations.
Yeah, same.
I like albums, and you know, radio is like the shorts as far as video goes. You know, it's like a little, you know, like like that song's part of a whole album. It's
Yeah.
part of a whole work of art.
Yeah.
Like, don't you want to hear it? But I started getting exposed to like music that I had never heard before. So an example of that is the Antlers. And they had this album called Hospice, and that is I've really, more and more so, I've discovered more musicians who do concept albums. So it's sometimes it's hard to dip into things that aren't a concept album,
Yeah.
but it's still, you know, I've still got lots of albums and bands I love that are. But there was just like a very small vocal part, and I was like, who is that? And this is back in 2009, and I looked up who it was. It was Sharon Van Etten.
Sharon Van Etten.
Yep. And
Also a part of what act?
she was her own thing. She was her own thing, and anytime I discover a band, I'm like, where are they playing? Where am I going to see them?
Yeah.
And I saw, you know, I went and saw Sharon Van Etten at a couple different places. One of them was at this little place in Northampton. It was a restaurant. It was $5.
Northampton, New Hampshire.
Northampton, Mass.
Northampton,
Yes.
Mass. Gotcha.
But that was right before she got working with somebody from the National. Now she's huge. She sold. I don't know if she sold out, but one of her headline shows was at the Opera House in Sydney.
Oh.
It is in Sydney, right? I'm going Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Opera
yeah.
House. But like she's huge now, and
That's fantastic.
And just because I heard her voice and looked in the liner notes of this Antlers album, you know.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of that. It kind of spiders out, you know. Her touring guitarist.
So we're similar. I call it spider webbing. That's my favorite thing to do, is listen to a band, take a band that I really dig this band.
Yeah.
And I figure out at least one element within that band that I really like, and how they're approaching what they're playing, how they're playing, what they're contributing, how they're seeing themselves in the music. And then I find out every other band that they've been a part of, and listen to that band and
Yeah.
see if there's anybody else in that band that does the same thing for me, because that musician most likely has surrounded themselves with specific musicians at different points in time.
Yeah.
Like in this area, there are so few musicians that are playing to become famous. The proportionality to those who are playing to become famous versus playing because it's the thing that they do, and it's
Yeah.
their art form, and it's their crafting, and they're simply existing in this little world that they've surrounded themselves with to make. There's a
Yeah.
lot of makers in this area.
Yeah.
Sure, there are some who are like, I'm going to become famous. Cool. I
Yeah.
hope you do. I hope you get everything you're hoping for. But the majority of people that I know, that's the farthest thing from a concern. It's like, so when you find that thread, you are most likely finding other musicians that they enjoy spending time with. They're like-minded. They're not infuriating. You know, why would you be in a band with a person making no money,
Yeah.
dedicating yourself to creating and crafting with these people? Like, they become like this weird amalgamation of like a spouse versus a sibling. Like there's this dynamic where you become best friends. You telepathically link. So if you're in a band with all kinds of different people and you've made all kinds of different projects, and then I find you, oh my God, finding out what else you've been in is just the most fun.
Yeah.
And you can get that thread pulled every single direction.
Yeah.
So yeah, we go a similar route, spider webbing, find somebody that is intriguing,
Yeah, and a
look
lot
them
of
up
times
and
that
then,
brings you to stuff that you're not going to get through the algorithms. You're not going to get it on the radio. A lot of time, I mean, there's
yeah,
definitely bigger, bigger acts that it will lead you to. But a lot of times, if you enjoy that type of thing like you do,
yeah,
you're going to end up finding somebody that like you would have never heard it otherwise, and it's something you find something meaningful, and it's like a little treasure, and you want to share it with everybody.
yeah, yeah. The commercially viable is not. To me, it's like candy. Like the super, super commercially viable stuff, the stuff that the masses just eat it up, and it's like it's because it's predictable and you don't have to think too hard, and it's readily identifiable, and all the other ideas may be misguided, maybe dead on about what makes pop interesting or appealing, but commercially viable is a very specific thing. It's not usually very daring. It's not typically very abstract, and I love digging into that stuff. That's got to be my favorite. Is if I've heard something like it, to me it's derivative. It's like somebody else already did that.
Yeah.
Show me a fresh take. And when I find people that are just coming at songwriting and instrument playing and the creative process in these different abstract, really interesting ways, that's everything. That's that's the pure stuff. That's so good.
Yeah.
Like I would never, if I was listening to the radio, if you were listening to the radio, you would never hear Tomahawk.
Mm-hmm.
You would have no idea who the band Tomahawk is.
Yeah.
If you're a fan of Mike Patton,
okay. Yeah.
you're like, oh, that's the guy from Bungle and Faith No More and Phantomas and Mondo Kane and
Yeah.
and. Now, he's a prolific version of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's got credits on, last time I looked it up, it was like 2008, and he was on 5,100 different albums.
Yeah.
So he's a rare breed, but you can do it. The band Dredge. Love the drummer.
Okay. Yep.
What other bands has he been in? Love the guitar player. What other bands has he been in? You're like, that's what brought me to Black Map, which is like, take a minute, look up Black Map, everybody, and welcome back. Look it up later. Great band, not hitting on a vein of like we're going to reinvent the wheel, but the way that they play with sonic pop, and it's beautiful. It's really cool. It's almost like get this kind of a progressive. You're wearing Coheed and Cambria.
Yeah.
You'll dig Black Map.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have found Black Map without Dredge.
Yeah.
And Dredge is phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, it just talk about beautiful, beautiful, beautiful music. That's that they're doing it for a very specific, intentional reason.
Yeah.
That's my favorite.
Yeah, I'm gonna check them out.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that's your favorite also, because the stuff that you turn me on to, it's a lot of times super pleasing, but in like a, hey, take a beat and listen to this kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta stop and dig in just a little bit, clear your mind,
Yeah.
let it wash. I dig
Yeah.
that. I dig that a lot.
Yeah.
What's next? What's the next show that you're
What is next?
eyeing? Who have you heard lately that you're like, okay, definitely, when they come anywhere near me?
Yeah, so I missed a chance recently, but I think like maybe my things are going to get to a point where I'm able to make it to more shows. But have you heard of LS Dunes?
No.
You heard of
LS
period S period Dunes?
Dunes. Okay.
It's going to be embarrassed if I don't get this right, because there's a couple. Anthony Green. Do you know who Anthony Green is?
I don't know Anthony Green.
He's got a voice that probably either you're going to love it or you're going to be like, no thanks. It might not be your cup of tea, but that's the beauty of music,
Yeah.
you know? It's
a lot with vocals too.
it's very unique.
Yeah.
And he has another project called Am I? Can I? It's called fucking whatever.
You can say whatever you want to
Okay.
say. We're
Fucking-
not losing any sponsors.
Yeah, fucking whatever is Anthony Green and then a few other guys that were touring together years ago. And then after the shows, they would go around and they just start singing a cappella. And they ended up recording all this, like they'd bang on a table and like tweak that and turn that into percussion, but there's like no instruments. But
Wicked cool.
It is a full sound. So my point here is the bass player and the drummer from Thursday, which isn't somebody I'm too familiar with, but I think that they're staples in some world. They're in either that band or in LS Dunes. So there's Anthony Green, this bass player and the drummer that have a history together.
Yeah.
Then you got Travis from Coheed, one of the guitar players. I mean,
Yeah.
both those guys play lead all the time. And then there's Frank from My Chemical Romance. And they are making music right now. I don't really like heavy music anymore. It's been a long time since I've popped on something heavy and been like, holy shit. Like, this stuff, I'm like, wow.
Heavy, give me my breadth of understanding with heavy music is wide. Like, are you talking about?
I would say kind of a mashup between like earlier Coheed and Cambria
Okay.
and middle of My Chemical Romance, but like really bass heavy. You can hear the bass guitar the whole time, and then the two dudes on guitar are just ripping it up, just like never repeating themselves through the whole song. They're just, it's great to listen to with headphones.
Ripping it up
'Cause
like
You hear one guy on one side, one on the other.
ripping it
just-
up like Mastodon ripping it up, or ripping
No.
it up like Clutch ripping it up.
Sort of like Coheed and Cambria rips it up,
Like Coheed.
just like little melodies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I really want to see them because like that is an awesome, like they are doing some awesome stuff together.
And that is that going to be the LS, or is that going to be
That's LS Dunes, yeah,
LS Stands, yeah.
yeah.
And the Green,
Anthony Green,
Anthony Green.
yeah, he's one of those guys. Once you start following him down the rabbit hole, you've got a lot of music. If you like his voice,
Anthony
you're gonna
Green.
find a lot of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's another good couple to look up. I'm excited
Yeah.
for that.
And then recently, I think it was the last show I went to, was a band called Cloud Cult.
Cloud
And that's
Cult.
like on a very different end of the spectrum, just in a different realm.
Sure.
But that guy, when I heard a song at some point, on Spotify, I was like, oh, I like this, I'll check it out later. And I read up about the band, and they've been labeled self-help rock.
Self.
And I was like, that's
rock.
cool, I gotta check them out sometime. I never checked them out, but I followed them. So at some point they released a new song and it came on and I was like, what did I do? What did I do that this ended up, they ended up telling me this band put out a new song. And I dove into them big time and just to kind of give an idea of my how I view them. I think one of their albums that I discovered is called Light Chasers. And it's a concept album. And it's like you're going through space and you're on a journey and like you're going to get through this. It's great. For me, that is the most important piece of art I have ever encountered.
Wow.
And
That's a lofty thing to say.
maybe I just found it at the right time.
Yeah.
With the things that, the way I've evolved. But it's like, whoa.
A rebirth moment.
It sets the expectations high. It's like, who else is doing this sort of philosophical, self-reflecting, hey, you're doing okay. Everything's going to be okay. You're going to get through this. Life is tough. We're going to get through this.
Is that
And
kind of like positive rap?
I've never heard positive
No?
rap. No.
Rappers that are like singing self-help kind of things, like where they're rapping about like,
I've
get up every
stumbled on
day
some
and
of
work
that.
hard, work on yourself.
Yeah, I'm not into that myself, but
No.
but what was I gonna say about Cloud
Self-help rock.
Cult, self-help rock?
Cloud
Yeah.
Cult, self-help rock,
Yep.
singing about things that
It's great stuff, and they recently did a show playing that album start to finish. I wasn't able to make it, but that was on my radar It was
Oh.
going to have like a ballet, and they have.
Oh, so they went next level with it, performative, and I
It's,
like that.
They take their art and make art with their art.
Yeah, I
They have
love
live
that,
painters
man. I
on
love
stage.
that. Yeah,
People are painting on stage. They auction it off after the show.
that's awesome.
Just really a pretty cool thing to stumble upon.
Yeah, I
But-
love that. That's we just did that. Curse just did that with the show Storytime,
Okay.
incorporating a story writer, taking the songs that are already written, Curse on his songs, as well as Guy Capistrano songs,
Yep.
and give them to a writer and let him read them, and then write a story that is inspired by those, so that those become the soundtrack.
Yes.
So I grabbed Mark Michael Adams, who's just a area icon. The guy has a great voice, a great command of storytelling, big D&D player, tabletop games and stuff. So how to imagine together a universe, like he knows all the words in Tolkien, like everything that he wrote and all the backstories, big Star Wars, like all and Trek. But his command of a story is great. So we gave him all of these songs, and just like, okay. At first, I didn't want to ask him to dream up an incredible story and knock it out of the park. So I just said, think of an author,
Yeah.
a passage that you like or something where these could all pertain to. But secretly, I'm like, man, I would love for him to just take this and make it a soundtrack. And he got in touch with me like 2 weeks later. He was like, dude, I'm listening to these songs, I'm reading these lyrics, and I've got this whole world coming together. Do you mind if I just write a story? I was like, yeah, exactly. Please, definitely do that.
Yeah.
And The Ballad of Jack and Nadia was born. Now it's a performance where it's a 2-hour show, and it involves 2 different musical performers and a storyteller that just walks you through this story. It's awesome. I love it. I would have never thought of doing it at all unless somebody was asking me and Ryan to perform a show that we didn't feel we had the artillery to do, so we came up with this new
Yeah.
kind of thing. I love the idea of making a ballet and putting like some kind of a dance element to it,
Yeah.
because that's not something that I'm super familiar with. Like I don't get into many different aspects of creative dance.
Yep.
I get it. I respect it, but it's like it's there, and I haven't done much with it.
Yeah.
But how to take an art that you've created and work that into it, that's an interesting puzzle. I wonder if that was something that was close to the artist, or if it was something that was a puzzling conundrum they wanted to figure out, like you were talking about earlier,
Yeah.
where it's like you use the thing to figure something out. I wonder if they went, I don't know a lot about ballet, but people seem into it. Let me see if I can retrofit this thing to ballet, or if it was just like channeled,
Yeah.
and they were like, ballet, okay, this is what my brain is telling me is to make it a ballet thing. Let's figure this out.
Yep. One of those things where, yeah.
I guess you'd have to read the liner notes, watch the
Yeah.
documentary.
Yeah. And hopefully it will at some point be available to see or something like that. But
Maybe you're the person to write the story for it.
But like you said, it's great when you have something that is of value to you, that's sort of like your art, and you have somebody who has like a different form of art, and you can trust them with it, and they show an interest in it, and you're like, I don't know how this is going to work, but I bet you can make it work.
Yeah.
You're going to make it work, and I trust you. And
But you can't do it unless you first make the thing. I
Yeah.
say this all the time. Just make the thing. Make something.
yeah.
You'll see. Trust me. You'll see.
Yeah.
Just make the thing. And once you make the thing, you can do something cool with it, or something cool can be done with it. It can have some kind of an effect or an interaction that leads you to something else, or simply gives somebody else something. You pass something along to somebody else because you made the thing, but it doesn't happen unless you first make the thing. So make something.
Yeah.
Story.
Yes.
Trying to push you in the direction. Like, take that. Is it Cloud Cult?
Yeah. Yep. Cloud
Yeah.
Cult.
See if you can write I mean, I don't want to tell you what to do if it's not motivating, but it seems like it was a transformational moment.
Yeah.
What if you write from the basis of trying to figure that out, or put that person in a position where they tell you the story you're looking to find out?
Yeah. Yep.
Write that and send it to them.
Yeah. From like the creative. Yeah.
Yeah, like I mean, like a documentary in reverse,
Yep.
documentary request.
Yeah. Yep.
Make something that compels them to want to divulge,
Yeah.
and then you get the documentary later,
Yeah.
or you make the documentary.
Yeah.
Is that interesting to you, documentary making? Because that's a neat form of storytelling that comes at that what you were describing from a different angle.
Yeah. I don't think I would have much. I haven't thought about it that much. I do like some. There are some documentaries that I like, but it's not like a big go-to genre for me.
Yeah.
As much as I love learning about things, but
Because I'm taking some of the things that you've written, and I'm thinking, like, if you were maybe not the documentary maker, director, but in some form, a writer or a creative mind that either sends things in different directions or puts a specific focus once you get to a place in the documentary, like to illustrate the moment in time that you're in. Again, I'm coming back to your tense piece, where you're outside the show, outside the Sinclair. If you take that ability to put people in a place and understand from inside a character's mind what they're experiencing and what's around them,
yeah,
in terms of documentary making, you're putting the person watching the documentary, every time you need to show them from the perspective of it's now that time, which happens over and over and over and over again in a documentary.
yeah,
Let somebody else do that construction side of it, while you just take focus and just like dial it in over and over and over again and let them use that.
Yeah.
I'm guessing you'd be a pretty great asset on a documentary team.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it'd be great if someone was like, "Hey, do this. Like, you have to do this." Like, okay, maybe,
gonna need
and
you
like,
to-
okay, I'll like either I'll figure it out or I won't. But like,
but I mean, it would be taking you and saying, read this or watch this person say in this interview, and then in these video snips that we shot during this day of shooting or something, and put it all together into a focus of 250 words, 350 words.
yeah,
And then just write it, rewrite it, write it again, rewrite it, look at all of the things and see, when you watch all of this footage, does this focus put you in that place?
yeah,
That might be a really valuable place for you to end up.
yeah. That would be interesting. Like I said, I do want to explore like all, so many various approaches to and different genres of writing. The more I can learn about writing, especially if it's something I didn't set out to like, oh, I want to learn this specific thing.
Yeah. Well, you have an adaptive mind. You have a very creative and adaptive mind. So I'm guessing every time somebody puts a tool in your hand, especially if they show you how to use it, you're not only going to get good at using it quickly, but you're going to see multiple different ways to use it that have nothing to do with maybe how that tool came into being.
Yes.
Again, Ryan does this constantly. He makes tools, and people are like, what is that? He's like, well, it's a tool that I made because I needed something that did this.
Yeah.
So, but if you don't know the art of making that tool,
Yeah.
it looks like all you can do is use the tools available to you.
Yeah.
But yeah, those creative minds and I think it's just like we talked about earlier, coming at things from multiple different directions. If you can't pick something apart from all different angles and agree and disagree at the same time, you don't come to any greater understanding.
Yeah.
But man, now I just want to see a documentary with you on the crew.
Yeah.
So, okay, so let's brainstorm this. how do we start with the end in sight? The end result is a documentary that teleports you into a place and time repeatedly, that shows you firsthand the story that's being told to you from, that past tense. So you have access immediately, not like necessarily a VH1 behind the music kind of way, but more of like you get an idea from basically being first person throughout the majority of it. Like Netflix does a whole bunch of those.
Yeah.
Every now and then you pop out of it and detectives are talking and stuff.
Okay.
Maybe that's just being tertiary to a bunch of crime drama stuff. I have a wife, so clearly I hear all of that stuff in the background.
Yep.
They're way into it. Why are women so way into it? Probably getting ready. Just guard all the time, on guard. What are all the different ways they can attack me?
Yeah, crime podcasts are popular.
Oh my God,
I didn't know that they were more popular among different demographics, but...
Yeah, it's like 89% women. Way into them.
Yeah. They probably just want to hear something interesting.
Well, there's all kinds of things that are interesting.
Yeah.
But I've heard a couple of women say, I'm just trying to make sure I'm on my toes.
Yeah.
Like, don't ever put myself in a situation that's even remotely close to like what that one was, because that's potentially how it ends up.
Yeah.
And which is probably logical.
Yeah. I don't know. I haven't listened to any crime podcasts.
It's sports for dudes. I haven't either.
Yeah.
It just doesn't do anything for me. I'm like, it's great.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's the way I am about sports as well. Like, I wouldn't listen to a sports podcast, and it probably breaks down amongst the demographics.
Oh my God, yeah. No, it's what you're interested in, I guess. But
Yeah.
I can't wrap my head around sitting around and listening to athletes yammer. I was an athlete. I still can't imagine sitting around like fight podcasts where they break down fighting from every single different angle. I would imagine it's, if you're way into fighting and that's your thing and that's your discipline and your art, it's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe what we're talking about isn't interesting at all because people are tuning out. They're like, I was hoping to hear more about sports. Can't you guys talk about sports? And we're like, actually, no, man. Creative writing, music.
Yeah.
The things that are interesting to us. I mean, that and aliens and multiple dimensional considerations.
Yeah.
So
I haven't thought that much about aliens. But
no.
But I don't even know if it's a thing. But like, people are always talking about being in a simulation. I'm like, okay. Like I had like a 2-3 hour drive once. And I'm like, I've got nothing better to do. I'm going to think this all the way through.
What did you come to? Sim theory? Pro or anti?
Oh, for me, it gets into the same. It's just like whether or not you're agnostic or you're an atheist, or for me, anyways. I've recognized so many things for myself to focus on and work on that I do have control over, and to think beyond the immediate effects that I potentially have on other people and the work that I have to do on myself. Like, I'll figure out the rest when I die, Like, it's fun to think about for me. Some of it I've already like ruled out that option or that, but what it really comes down to for me is we don't know. But there's so much that we can be working on within ourselves or creating and adding to other people's experiences to it's like the concrete answers. Like, what good is a concrete answer going to give? I do, still, I like taking the different perspectives of it. If it's a simulation, is it just a simulation for me? Is it a simulation for everybody? Okay, what are the two options there?
Yeah, is
And, like,
everybody an NPC
and let's-
except me?
Yeah, so let's separate those out. What would the purpose of this simulation be? You know, you know, what are optical illusions? What's the blind spot in your eye if you're in a simulation? When this is like really technical, why would they fuck up and like give you a blind spot in your eye? If this is really meaningful, or is this really important? Is this a really important simulation and they're trying to study it, or is it just for fun? If it's just for fun, why do we all feel like we want to fly and we can't fly? If we're just a simulation anyways.
Yeah.
You know, I spent hours thinking about it. You know, I can't remember all the conclusions. Or
is not flying
the
simply
various-
the torment because we want to fly and it's the thing that we needed to be the torment?
and whoever made the simulation also can't fly, so it's like, fuck you, you're not going to be able to fly either.
I'm gonna make you not be able
it
to
just
fly
keeps
too.
going up and keeps going up. And apparently no higher, you know, simulation
Yeah.
or the final one, like, nobody can fly.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I've heard people swear that it's definitely a simulation. Elon Musk is like, it's so much more probably a simulation than it's not that it must be. And I'm like, nah, I don't know. I mean, I've heard smart people decide that it must be, and I've heard smart people decide there's no way that it is. Like the processing power, and then AI and quantum computing, you mix those two things together and literally all of the things that don't seem possible become immediately possible because you can't conceptualize what's possible until it's created.
Yeah.
Once they create a thing and it's like, oh, that's how it's possible. Then you realize, okay, so maybe punching a hole through 10 different dimensions with this processor and letting an artificial general intelligence that knows everything that's ever been knowable about the perceived universe, maybe that's the thing that creates worlds. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. Possibly. I don't know. You know, like if there's enough energy, is there enough energy? And then you look at the amount of suns that exist simply in this galaxy. It's like, okay, so if all of those are shedding energy, then yeah, there must be. Maybe they're all simply energy contained within a system, and that entire system is greater consciousness, and it's just kind of like beating and
Yep.
breathing and expanding. We know it all is anyway.
Yeah.
So if that's not a simulation, fine.
Yeah.
What is it? I don't know. Nobody knows.
Mm-hmm.
So is there any point in even trying to figure it out, or is maybe the more important thing to make use of whatever perception you have now and play with those perceptions and realities and help other people to do the same? Maybe that's the entire and only point.
Yeah. That's what I'm for.
Have you heard
But
the one?
like I said, I enjoyed spending a 2-hour drive
Sure.
thinking about it, and like, all those thoughts, are they worth it? This is the first time it's ever come up, and it's because I brought it up. I've been itching to tell somebody.
That you sat for a while
That
and
like it took
considered
2
some
hours.
theory?
Yeah. But like, there's a lot of things that are fun to think about, and they're, I don't know, it's not mental gymnastics, but like mental exercise.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. My brain literally never stops just revving, and if I don't have anything to throw in there, that's unending, untied out problems. That's what I like to, because you just get to consider. That's it. There's no figuring out why, because you don't know the end. So it's all of the different possibilities, what makes sense based off of how many different things you can incorporate.
Yeah.
And yeah, a bit of that does come back around to the creativity side of things, and not knowing, but thinking up things that are plausible based on what we perceive as possible.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if it doesn't seem possible, the natural inclination is to figure out how it could be possible. But if you don't know what's impossible in the first place,
Yeah.
or what has an answer in the first place, you don't know where to start going from.
Yeah.
Like, you know you don't have the end, but you know where you are.
Yeah.
Where you are is, okay, I appear to be upright, but what is upright? Okay, so now you've got a start point.
Yeah.
What is upright? Are we upright, or are we simply attached to something that's spinning really, really fast and flying through the vacuum of space?
Yeah.
It's that one. We're just not laying flat against the ground, which is where gravity would tell us to go if we weren't sitting in chairs. That to me is an interesting problem, because years and years ago I came to the conclusion that every single pinwheel galaxy must have a supermassive black hole at the center of it. What else sent it spinning? What else caused that to happen?
Yeah.
Nothing causes that to happen without there being a center point that's drawing everything. And that's what you would expect to happen. And then like 3 years ago, they have this big scientific discovery where they're like, there's a black hole at the center of the Milky Way. I was like, what do you... Don't tell me you just figured that out. Come on. Spoiler, there's one at the center of every single spiral galaxy. Has to be. Tell me what else would possibly send an entire series of bodies of mass into that kind of a...
Yeah.
I mean, but I guess that's... Maybe, is that science? Is that just people saying, well, we couldn't see it, we didn't know that it was there, therefore we can't decide it's there? I respect the hell out of the scientific process, but there's a point where you have to go, come on, man.
Yeah.
Come on. Like Newton had that one when it, like an apple fell on his head. Why did it do that? Why did it do that? How do you not look at the Milky Way galaxy and think anything other than there's something drawing everything in? Which means if every single one of those galaxies is a pinwheel galaxy and is spinning, eventually all of that stuff gets eaten, or another supermassive black hole comes in and smashes that galaxy.
Yeah.
Any number of possibilities.
Yeah.
You don't know that that's a possibility until you know that sometimes supermassive black holes cross each other's path.
Yep.
And it's not just that everything in that galaxy is going to end up getting eaten by that black hole, maybe two smash into each other, and everything that's in that orbit of both of them go flying off in different directions.
Yeah.
Like what's going to happen to the Milky Way galaxy eventually.
Yeah.
Open-ended.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Almost as much as music. Well, I don't want to dominate your entire night, but I do want to know what is the direction. Talked about what your fascinations are and how you're approaching them, but you know, now that you have a clearer focus in your direction and an idea of what you're working towards, what do you have in a couple of years that you want to try and suss out? Can I push you in the documentary direction, or is there something greater that you've got a fascination for?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the writing goes, I would like to get to a place in the next couple of years where I have an actual memoir that...
Yeah. So the memoir is number one.
Yeah. Yep.
Of yourself, or are you going to do the
oh, yeah.
fictional?
Of myself.
Of yourself, cool.
And trying to find ways that don't sound like, you know, so like we talked about with stuff I wrote on Facebook over the years. That stuff seems really important to convey in a story, and is trying to find ways to incorporate that into myself discovering it instead of being like, you know, instead of like a self-help type of thing. Presenting it as I experienced it and sort of the evolution of how I benefited from it, you know? But have it not just be that. That's just part of the story, you know? The arts, you know, the shows, you know? And tapping back into, that's one thing that I really wanted to do with memoir, is to be able to tap back into those things that I wrote back, you know, 2013, 2014, the ones that I've really connected with, and I do that in that piece about the Sinclair, is, you know, I wanted to bring, and again, the one about the Sinclair isn't like some self-help story, it's just it's a solid story, you know, but it ties in this work that was old that I don't really know what to do with, but it's like, I really like that. Other people connected to those feelings that are captured in that. So how can I bring these old pieces in, either to give context to the process of growing, so you don't have to get into all the nitty gritty of like, this is how I was 10 years ago, but being like, somehow presenting those in a way that gives more impact to where I got to, where I am, you know?
Is there anything about that story that you want to talk about specifically? Like, it's not like I mean, it's not really a spoiler.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think there is anything to it that it would be like, well, don't talk about that because it's going to give away that part. Everybody should simply read it. But would you dive into talking about any specifics surrounding it?
Well, one thing I would say is one reason why that's something that I didn't ever put on Facebook. One is it's long, but also using, the tools about dialogue going back and forth. So, there's a small conversation that I dropped in there that goes back and forth, and I have to remember now, but my lines are all the way to the right. It's almost like a script. The other person is all the way to the left, right and left. But it makes it to where, you don't have to do the and I said and he said and then you breaks away into this. We're having this conversation. It's perfectly understandable who's saying what, and then it breaks into this flashback of mine from that night of 3 years before that. One of the last times I was at the show there. And then it jumps right back into the conversation, and it goes back and forth. There's a lot of stuff. There's a moment where there's tarot cards, and there's a reading, and it's like, okay, how do I present this? How do I write this out? So I just went with like FLIT, F-L-I-T, all caps, with stars, asterisks on each side. And I tried that out, but it was like right in the center of the page. So you have all this stuff happening, and you have...
Oh, the flipping of it.
Yeah.
So that's you giving texture within the realm.
Yep.
And the way that you're going from now to 3 years prior and then back again. So your anchor point is in the first person perspective of the person telling it.
Yes.
Because naturally, that's where you would want, if you, so that you as a reader don't feel off balance, you anchor yourself in what you're telling me is the fact right now, and now we're looking together at 3 years ago, and then coming back here. Wow.
So one of the things that I've really been excited about, and hopefully we'll be discussing it more, but like the very simple things of, right justification, left justification. I can't do that on Facebook. I haven't explored where I can tie that in to the way it's presented to people, because that now is part of what matters to me. Like, that's part of the piece of work. It's part of the art is that stuff, the center, when I recall the thing that I wrote back in 2014, and I'm questioning whether or not that was a prophecy of what I'm going through in 2020, I don't just put that in just like regular typed out. I put it in centered, so that it's like, this is a separate thing. It's really important because look what, you'll see why it's important. But just stuff like that. I've been excited to get it somewhere where it can be presented like that. Like when I emailed it to you, the email kept it right.
Yeah.
But like, I'm excited to present it as the shape that it is, and besides sharing it.
Yeah, the formatting is a lot more important than it's given credit for. It's not just about what's being said, what notions are being or attempted to be conveyed, but it's similar to punctuation in that punctuation attempted to tell you where to take a little breath, sip of a breath, versus full stop without an upward inflection. pause and now we have a new idea or a supporting idea.
Yeah.
You know, the way that you set things on a page and the way that you read through, and even in spacing, that's something that fascinated me about editors, is the way that editors used to craft magazine articles versus newspaper articles versus billboard advertising, like how far apart letters are spaced in words versus how far apart those words are spaced, and you know where you decide to start and stop a paragraph. I'm a fan particularly of writing, hence part of my fascination with your process. But like a wordsmith would be the way that I would describe my fascination, trying to figure out exactly what words, how to line them up to create an idea and a sentiment so that people can end a sentence knowing more than just what's conveyed with the words.
Yeah.
And I think that it kind of points to whether or not the platform that you're using is the right one, or if a new way of using that platform and an adaptive process on that platform is the answer. You know, is it to continue releasing them in the format that Facebook is giving you, or is it you write it and then you release it in video form, but you're reading it in a box and you determine where the words are coming up, and you know if there's a color fade to this side of the screen versus this side of the screen to give you a feeling of what this person is and what this person is.
Yeah.
You know, is this like a Roots in Mother Earth hippie? Maybe it's a little bit greenish over here, and this person's like a deities and Mother Universe kind of, and it's like a little bit blue and fades to like a kind of dark blue towards the top, and then your words laid over it. Now you get an idea of the two different people that are having the conversation. I mean, maybe that's the route.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because then you don't have to have the he said, she said, the I said, the Sally said, and then, you know, because you've got the separation, you've got the differentiation, you don't have to hire actors.
Yeah.
Or you can, because thanks AI.
Yeah. Yep.
That'll be a fun thing to mess with. Have you gotten into that at all yet?
Not really.
Messing with AI for situational stuff?
Not with anything.
Not to help writing.
No. Not really with anything. Every now and then, I'll give it some weird prompt to like do some picture or something that I would find funny. It's probably, you know.
Yeah. Goofy shit.
Yeah. But one thing, it's just a fun story. There's one thing I like about that I've discovered over the years with social media is you do have opportunities to connect with people that you would never connect with, whether that just be the average person. And I have so many friends that mean so much to me that like somehow I met them on Facebook and like they are so dear to me. But also with like some musicians, and this one musician, he had a little joke going about the how basically the ethics of like baby racing, like they were
Baby racing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think they did it at like some football game. They had babies and they put them down.
Probably. Sounds like, yeah.
So he
Fox
was like,
Sports.
he's like, I'm going to start a GoFundMe or a change.org. Like, we got to put an end to this baby racing.
Oh, God. Okay.
So I messaged him and I was like, I said something like, what you got to do is you got to like develop a story where you are a former like baby racing champion and like write it about how much it's messed up your life. And he's like, I wish I had time for that. If you could take care of that, that'd be awesome. So like for one night I was just like, and I was doing the heavy lifting with the AI. I was telling it all about my life as a former baby racing champion, you know? And then I had it like write this whole thing about the ways it manifested in adult life, and it was fun. I mean, I was laughing so much that night.
I want that to become, at very least, a short, like a 15-minute short. Can you please do that? Hashtag baby racing.
Oh, I can figure out something to.
Oh my God, I want that to happen.
Like I'll share the results. I think I still have like the screenshots of the whole conversation because I was just cracking up the whole time. I'd come up with terms that people in the underground baby racing leagues would do to like make their babies faster. So I'd be like, and I'd be like, tell me what hot socks are.
Hot socks.
Hot socks. And then
Oh,
AI
they've
was
got
like,
special socks. Of course they do.
and AI would be like, oh, that's whenever you put hot, wet socks on the baby to make him go faster. I'm like, that's great. Tell me what this is, And it was great. It came up with some weird stuff based on me saying, hey, what does this mean? It was fun.
Oh my God, I want that to become a reality. Please make that become a reality. Okay, so I want to know how, if people wanted to find you, they can go on Facebook and go to Pete Twiss.
Yep.
Are you going to start anything, a Substack or Reddit like that, any other kind of thing, or is that your distribution?
No,
now?
I would like to get to a point where I have like a Substack.
Okay.
Most everything that I've got, I've been using it for a long time. Basically, a long time ago, I ended up with the Facebook name Oftentimes Pete. Because I didn't want people to know, I didn't want people who knew me to find me for various reasons.
Yeah.
But that like became a thing.
Oftentimes Pete.
Yeah. And
Okay.
so for a long time, Facebook was cool with that, but then somebody reported me. And so on Facebook, I am still just Pete Twiss.
Okay.
But anything that I'm doing creatively that I want to grow or whatever, it's Oftentimes Pete.
Cool. So if they have a way to get at you, and then I should also mention, I invited you to publish through Seacoast Entertainer. So the Seacoast Entertainer website, hopefully, we're hoping, launches sometime mid to late April.
Yeah.
And we'll have at least one or two of your pieces on that when we launch. So that'll be another place.
That's going to be great.
I can't
appreciate
wait.
it.
Oh yeah, no, dude, this is a local arts media hub. So it's as many people as we can possibly get contributing, and it's honor to have you because I can't wait to put some of your stuff out there. I've had a blast following it, and I know that other people are going to. So
Yeah, thanks.
definitely there. But until then, they can become familiar with your stuff that way.
Yeah.
Good to know. I'd love to have you back in the future because I want to find out if baby racing happened. I'm going to be following along one way or another.
Yeah.
But I treasure your friendship. I love you as an artist. I can't wait to see where all of this goes because it's a blast watching and you are compelling. If nothing else, you are compelling and inspiring. So,
Like I said, I always appreciate you and your appreciation for the arts and what you're saying. You're growing the artistic, you're bringing that artistic stuff together in a way that I see, and you're allowing opportunities for artists that maybe they wouldn't have otherwise. I really appreciate what you do and what basically is what art means to you. And
thank you for saying that. I'm happy to do it. Any amount that I can help the creatives out there. It's tough enough being in the head of a creative person, and whatever I can do to help those coming along. That's what I aim to do. So that's what Seacoast Entertainer is. It's a bunch of artists just seeing what they can do to help other artists.
Yep.
So thank you for coming in, ladies and gentlemen. Pete Twiss. I want to see everybody getting involved in all of the different aspects of the local scene and get ready to start submitting your experiences. I'm looking at you, whichever camera everybody's in. Thanks for joining us again. I hope you got something out of this podcast. I know I'm going to listen back to it because there are some names in there that I'm going to go deep diving into. So thank you for coming in.
Yeah,
Much
thank you.
appreciated.
Thank you.
Love you all. See you out there.
Hi everyone, Sean with Seacoast Entertainer. I hope you're already enjoying one of the greatest communities in the world and in the homes of that community on social media, like Seacoast Music Scene groups of New Hampshire, Maine, and Massachusetts, and the fastest growing new group, Lakes Region Music Scene, all on Facebook, and at Seacoast Entertainer on IG, as well as Seacoast_Tainer on X. That's in addition to the shows we've been hosting or sponsoring around the region, like Jam of Legends, Writers in the Round, and these podcasts you're listening to now. And this is only the beginning. We're growing, and it takes a lot of work behind the scenes. As anyone who has built a business or organization will tell you, it is effort. When it's entirely volunteer driven, it is devotion. Devotion, though, doesn't pay the bills. And building a world-class website comes with bills. Fortunately, we have a community leader who has stepped up to help as an in-kind sponsor to cover the vast development costs. We could use more. A website as robust and feature-rich as the one they're building us has a lot of services backing it up in order to give you the experience in following the arts you didn't realize you were missing. We'll need to cover the costs of these services. Things like a stream of content from your favorite local artists from the popular social sites, fed to one central location outside the confines of those services, and a calendar populated with schedules of upcoming events across the region. Certainly, not least, is real journalism will make a return to the Seacoast under the leadership of our editor-in-chief, Christopher Hislop. With this comes all of our favorite pieces like 5 Spot and Spotlight. One of my favorite undertakings in all of this is the Musicians Archive, a constantly expanding archive of the musicians and bands who have come before and those who are just getting their stage legs. We all know that we're standing on the shoulders of giants here, so we'll pay tribute to as many as we can identify. From the ultra-popular like Say Zuzu, Thanks to Gravity, The Press Project, and Fly Spinach Fly, to wildly impactful artists whose names you've never heard. When you hear me reading ad copy for businesses, know this: they're paying actual money to support our amazing way of life, engaging with this gift to humanity, the arts. Here they are. Without these folks, taking Seacoast Entertainer to the next levels wouldn't be happening. Not to this scale. Tangram 3DS actively supports our music and arts scene and has proudly been part of it for the last 20 years. Their creative pros bring vision to life with everything from 3D renderings and VR to video, animation, web design, and branding. As a team of artists living and working on the Seacoast, Tangram considers a thriving local culture essential to us all for the connections we make, communities we build, and creativity we foster. Visit Tangram3ds.com to learn more, see their work, and imagine what they can do for you.